Election Technology, organized by Office of Chief Electoral Officer, Kerala. Elections form the bedrock of any vibrant democracy, as technology increasingly plays an increasingly important role in all walks of life. Elections are no exception. Identifying and applying the relevant technologies that scalable, accessible, acceptable to all stakeholders is not an easy task. Today's workshop brings together leading voices from diverse spectrum of expertise sharing their thoughts and experience in low technology and applied experiences. Over the course of today's session, we will dive into key legal frameworks, technical challenges, and real-world implementations. We encourage active participation during our interactive Q&A section, which is part of each section. Before we begin, a quick reminder to please set off your mobile devices to silent mode to ensure an uninterrupted session. Without further ado, I request Shamla ma'am, additional CEO, to formally welcome the distinguished guest. Ma'am, the stage is yours.
Respected Chief Electoral Officer, distinguished dignitaries, esteemed speakers, and my dear colleagues, a very warm morning to you. As part of India's chairship of International IDEA in 2026, the India International Institute for Democracy and Election Management, or IIIDEM, has undertaken the vital task of building a global corpus of knowledge around election management to be shared across democracies worldwide. Within this broader vision, the Office of the Chief Electoral Officer Kerala has been entrusted with developing a practitioner-ready framework for modern standards for election technology. Today's workshop marks a critical milestone in that journey. Our primary objective is to bridge academic insights with real-world operational experience to refine and elevate our draft report on election technology. It's my distinct privilege to formally welcome you all to this workshop. A special welcome to our Chief Electoral Officer, Dr. A. Kaushikan IAS, whose visionary and guidance continues to drive our key initiatives. A very warm welcome to you, sir. A special welcome to Dr. Saji Gobinath. We are honored to have him here. He is the Vice Chancellor of Digital University of Kerala. Even amidst his official commitments, he consistently makes time to collaborate with us in this key initiative. A very warm welcome to you, sir. I also extend warm welcome to Dr. Balakrishnan, Director Newell's Kochi. Despite his heavy academic responsibilities, he has generously joined us today to share his expertise. A heartfelt welcome to you, sir. A very warm welcome to our esteemed dignitaries present here with us in person. Advocate Shanmugam D. Jain, Senior Advocate, High Court of Kerala. Dr. Gerima Shakia, Assistant Professor, IIT Palakkad. Dr. Preetham Mukherjee, Assistant Professor, Digital University of Kerala. Dr. Franklin John, Senior Research Fellow, Kerala Blockchain Academy. Dr. D. Dhanuraj, he hasn't come yet. Dr. Dhanuraj will join us shortly. He is from Center Public Policy Research. Dr. Nishma R., Head of Research by Asian Base, and our state-level master trainers from Trivandrum who have joined here. A very warm welcome to you all. Join with us virtually, we are delighted to welcome Dr. Rekha Pillai, Institute of Federalism, University of Fribourg, Dr. Raghava, Associate Professor, IIT Palakkad, Dr. Ajay Kumar from IIIDEM, Piyush, our Research Associate, and our District Collectors and SLMTs joining online from various districts. Delegates, I also extend my warm welcome to delegates, if any, joining us online from premier academic institutions and partner organizations across the country. Finally, a heartfelt welcome to my colleagues and Rajesh Pillai and his dedicated team whose hard work made all the arrangements for today's workshop possible. We deeply appreciate your time, expertise, and shared commitment to making election technology more secure, inclusive, and robust. I wish you all an enriching and productive session today. Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am, for the warm welcome to all dignitaries. We truly appreciate your opening remarks and leadership bringing us together. To formally inaugurate today's proceedings, it's our distinct honor to invite our Chief Electoral Officer, Kerala, Dr. A. Kaushikan IAS, for the inaugural address. Dr. A. Kaushikan is an IAS officer of the 2009 batch in the Kerala cadre and is currently serving as Chief Electoral Officer, Kerala. Before joining the civil service, he started his career in Tamil Nadu as a veterinary assistant surgeon and moved on to work as an assistant professor in Tamil Nadu Veterinary and Animal Science University. Thereafter, he joined the IAS in the year 2009. He started his career in civil service as Sub-Collector Ottapalam. Dr. Kaushikan held various positions including those of Mission Director, NG NRGS, Inspector General of Registration, Director Survey and Land Records, District Collector Thiruvananthapuram, Kollam, Thrissur and Idukki. He had also served as MD Kerala Water Authority, Commission Disaster Management, Commissioner Land Revenue and Secretary to Government Posts, SCST and BC Development Departments. He had also served as General Observer under the ECI in various elections in states of Telangana, Bihar, Jammu and Kashmir and West Bengal. Kaushikan sir, we request you kindly to address the gathering and officially inaugurate the program. Welcome, sir.
Good morning, everybody. Distinguished guests, also guests online, international delegates, election administrators, technology experts, and fellow custodians of democracy. Welcome, one and all. Throughout the ages, democracy has been defined by a single solemn act, a citizen stepping forward to cast a vote. It is a moment where every voice, regardless of wealth, background, or status, carries equal weight. We gather here today to pause and deliberate on this most pivotal thing in the functioning of a democracy. We are here to reflect on how technology, one of the defining markers of human progress, can further strengthen the electoral process while preserving the values that democracy seeks to uphold. As mentioned in the welcome address, India holds the chairship of International IDEA in 2026. This is an occasion of immense pride. Not only that, it also brings great responsibility for all of us. The International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance, International IDEA, is an intergovernmental organization comprising of 35 member states, meaning member countries, dedicated to supporting sustainable democracy worldwide. Headquartered in Stockholm, Sweden, it provides comparative data analysis and capacity building to strengthen electoral processes and democratic institutions. During India's chairship, the Election Commission of India and the India International Institute of Democracy and Election Management, IIIDEM, with which we are all familiar of, have undertaken an initiative to develop a corpus of knowledge that can be shared among election management bodies across the world. This includes global themes, model standards, and best practices that are transferable across geographic boundaries and useful to election practitioners. These standards are being shaped through a rigorous practitioner-led methodology that gives due importance to operational realities, emerging challenges, and the lived experiences of election management bodies across diverse electoral contexts. Kerala has been entrusted with the responsibility of developing the model standards on election technology. For this purpose, IIIDEM has adopted a structured 9-step methodology that seeks to ensure both academic rigor and practitioner usability. The initiative seeks to provide election management bodies with practical guidance for evaluating and adopting election technologies in an informed and systematic manner. Before discussing the draft report itself, it is important to first understand why technology has become such an integral part of election management today. So, we may ask ourselves, why technology in elections? Now, elections in a democracy are a periodic exercise where scale and diverse stakeholders converge. It's a process in which election management bodies, political parties, candidates, and above all, the voter come together to shape the democratic mandate. It involves a scale that is unparalleled by almost any other public activity undertaken by the state. The process must remain simple and understandable to every voter, while at the same time being foolproof to prevent any attempt to compromise its integrity. Achieving this balance, while earning and sustaining the trust of all stakeholders, is perhaps the most important responsibility of every election management body. Technology is adopted in the electoral process primarily to address one or more of the fundamental challenges of elections: managing scale, minimizing errors, improving efficiency, and reaching the last mile and the last voter. One of the most remarkable success stories in the application of technology to elections comes from India itself. As a young democracy, we were confronted with challenges that were perhaps more diverse and complex than those faced anywhere else in the world. Climatic, geographical, linguistic, and social diversity presented enormous operational challenges. Yet, through systematic planning, institutional capacity building, and continuous innovation, India has developed one of the world's most effective and trusted election management systems. We have been able to capture the will of every voter electronically, store it electronically, retrieve it, and also count it in an impeccable manner that has complete public trust. That is what India has achieved with its EVMs. India's journey in adopting technology for elections began in the 1980s with the computerization of electoral processes. In 1998, electronic voting machines, EVMs, were introduced, and interestingly, Kerala was the first state where EVMs were used in an election. Today, the technological ecosystem supporting election management extends far beyond EVMs. Almost every stage of the electoral process is supported by technology. As we know, ECI-NET, the umbrella platform developed by the Election Commission of India, brings together multiple modules to manage the end-to-end election process securely, efficiently, and at scale. Active research is also underway in areas such as decentralized ledger technologies, artificial intelligence, and machine learning to develop new tools that can further strengthen election management while preserving the integrity, transparency, and inclusiveness of the electoral process. These developments also raise important questions for election management bodies. As technology continues to evolve and new solutions emerge, how can they be evaluated in a systematic, transparent, and evidence-based manner? That is the question. What considerations should guide decisions on their adoption and implementation? It is these questions that the present initiative seeks to address. Before we begin today's deliberations, let me briefly set the context for the draft report that forms the basis of our discussions today. The draft report is the outcome of an extensive review of international literature guidance documents, and documented experiences of the use of technology in elections. This was complemented by a comparative study of election technology practices across more than 50 countries and an in-depth examination of selected international case studies representing diverse electoral contexts. Together, these have provided valuable insights into how different countries have approached the adoption and use of election technology. One of the most important lessons emerging from this work is that while the principles underpinning credible elections, such as transparency, integrity, inclusiveness, and accountability, are universal, the implementation of election technology must always be informed by context. There is no single model that can be applied across all democracies. The choices made by countries are shaped by their legal frameworks, institutional capacities, electoral traditions, and societal needs. It is with this understanding that the draft report seeks to identify a set of standards components that can guide election management bodies in evaluating and adopting technology in a structured, transparent, and context-sensitive manner. Today's workshop marks an important stage in that process. While the draft report provides a foundation, its value will ultimately depend on the collective wisdom of those who have studied elections, designed election systems, and managed elections in practice. By bringing together academic experts and election practitioners, this workshop provides an opportunity to examine the draft from multiple perspectives, ranging from emerging technologies and their suitability across different stages of the electoral process to cybersecurity, legal and regulatory frameworks, and implementation experiences from diverse electoral contexts. The insights and recommendations emerging from today's deliberations will help validate the findings, refine the proposed standards components, and ensure that the resulting model standards are both evidence-based and practically relevant. It is through this dialogue between research and practice that we hope to develop model standards that are not only technically robust, but also practical, adaptable, and responsive to the realities of election management. With this, I invite all of you, both offline and online, to participate actively in today's discussions and share your valuable perspectives. Your expertise and experience will be invaluable in strengthening this initiative and ensuring that the model standards truly reflect both global knowledge and practical realities. I wish the workshop every success, and I look forward to the insightful discussions ahead. Thank you very much.
We extend our heartfelt gratitude to Kaushik sir for formally inaugurating this workshop. Your valuable perspective on the intersection of technology and governance gives us clear roadmap for today's discussion. Thank you, sir. We now move to highlight today's proceedings keynote address. To share thoughts and insight on election technology, it's my privilege to introduce our keynote address speaker, Dr. Saji Gopinath, Vice Chancellor, Digital University, Kerala. Dr. Saji Gopinath is an eminent personality with a proven track record of nurturing new initiatives in multiple areas. Presenting Vice Chancellor of Digital University of Kerala, he played an instrumental role in converting IITMK into a university focused on digital science and innovation. Prior to this, he was the CEO of Kerala Startup Mission, leading it to become one of the most important startup ecosystem in the country and also winning international accolades. His journey with IIM Kozhikode started in 1997 and served as Dean Academics, Dean Development, and Professor of Operation Management. He has published several research papers in reputed journals, consulted leading corporations and national organizations. Recognized internationally for this contribution to education and industry growth. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Dr. Saji Gopinath to deliver keynote address. Welcome, sir.
Good morning. Respected Chief Electoral Officer of Kerala, Dr. Kaushigan, Additional CEO Sharmila Madam, Professor Balakrishnan, Director of NUALS, other distinguished invitees, speakers, the delegates joining both online and offline. At the outset, it's a privilege for Digital University to be part of this major initiative on creating a corpus which could be used globally on transforming the electoral processes across the world. And as Honorable CEO has mentioned, Kerala has been entrusted to develop model standards for election technology. And DUK is very happy and privileged to play a small role in this particular project. So what I would like to share with you maybe in another 10-15 minutes is primarily to look at expanding on what Dr. Kaushigan has mentioned. In fact, he has already given you a great context and also the purpose of this workshop, as well as why technology is required and what are the challenges being faced on that. So I'll just dwell upon that and look at what type of technologies are being used across the world and what are some of the paradoxes in that context, and then maybe that also leads us to some of the findings of the draft report per se. So when we speak about technology, we many times think about technology only from a context of the client-facing model, that is the voter-facing aspect as such. And like Dr. Kaushigan has rightly pointed out, in a country or in countries where the scale is very important, access is very important, and there is a diversity of people with different levels of knowledge, you need to ensure that the technology which you adopt should be very simple, which is accessible, and also should ensure the basic tenets of any democratic election. So if you look at across the last 100 years, we'll see that in the world, we have seen the voter-facing technologies have changed from ballot boxes. And ballot boxes, as we know in India also, we used to have ballot boxes which is actually named as per the symbols, and then it has moved to the other type of smaller level of technologies development. When digital technology actually started being emerging, we actually started adopting many of the digital transformation as such. So India is one of the few countries in the world, even today, which is using electronic voting machines, but there are other countries which has actually gone to other levels like mobile voting and internet voting, and today we also use quite a bit of digital analytics and data analytics tools which need not necessarily be on the front end but also in the back end per se. So that's the context in which we are actually meeting today. And if you look at this use of technology, the use of technology can actually be divided into the four broad contexts or contours per se. One is primarily we use in the electoral cycle for identification of who is the right person is be there or not. Then to record the vote and to communicate the results as well as multiple aspects of it. The rules, the communication can be both ways. The views of the voter or the key player of the democracy also can be obtained using that. And then of course very important, the back end, the processing and administration person. And that's basically where EasyNet and some of those tools are actually becoming very important as such. But as discussed by Honorable CEO, the whole purpose is how do we enhance the efficiency so this will be accessible, it becomes, and how do you maintain the transparency and the trust in the democratic process. So it's actually not it looks to be simple, but it's very challenging because at one end you need to actually ensure that you need to reach such a wider range of geographical and other conditions, but at the same time you need to maintain the secrecy and somebody need to prove that it has to be immutable as such. So these challenges are something which technology is actually addressing the issues of scale, the complexity and even the mobility per se. And that is basically where the key challenge comes into picture, where we need to balance this innovation with integrity, security and inclusiveness. And that leads to not only technological challenges, and in fact today's workshop we'll be speaking about all those aspects, technological, legal, and even the cultural ecosystem. And like again, the studies which we have done and many other studies have always shown that there's a contextual need to fine-tune the standards per se. So that's a model which this particular study also has developed per se. So if you summarize the way how the technology has been used, we can actually divide these technologies into three stages. The first stage, which is basically where generally not visible to a common voter, is the pre-election period. And that pre-election period starts with creating the legal framework where the discussions happen, the electoral laws are actually being formed, and that's basically where the quite a bit of a data protection and policy privacy aspects comes in. Many of the other legal infrastructure will actually interface in this particular stage. Then of course you have a great planning and implementation. We just have completed SIR, and the amount of technology being used in SIR to process such a very large volume of data is an example of that. Then we need to also train, and we used to say, as I come from a management background, and in project management we say that the most successful project in the world could be considered as Indian elections, because you have people come from diverse backgrounds who never knew each other, come together and conduct an election in a very perfect time, perfect scope, and within the perfect cost which is being actually assigned as such. A true example of a great project management person. But for that, you need to have training and education, which is also being used today. Using the technology, we can actually scale it up, and also newer technologies are actually could be used or being used as such. Then you also have the voter registration to ensure that the right voter is registered as well as nobody is actually excluded. So both online and offline registration happen on that. That's primary, and sometimes it also extends even to the election campaign, especially to monitor the election campaigns and to ensure that the rules and regulations of which ensures a fair and a transparent election is actually be maintained. There also we use election campaign, and there are countries which uses big data tools to ensure that how is the election spending monitoring is happening and things like that. Now all these 5 levels are primarily the back-end operations. Then comes the election day. That's primarily where we have voting operation. As we said earlier, there's a range of solutions available in that. And then we also have to ensure that results processing and verification. And some of you who have lived the pre-election, EVM world knows that how many days it used to take or how many hours it used to take to declare an election to compare to what is happening today as such. And then we also have the post-election period. We also do an audit, and audit trial also happen in this context as such. So this is primarily where we actually go through the election cycles, the pre-election, election, and the post-election period. And for that, a host of technologies are actually available. I don't want to go through all of them. And this is primarily from the literature. If you take the multiple type of countries, I don't think any country has adopted all of them, but some or other has actually been adopted by different countries, and we'll see that what extent of that has been adopted very soon. But just to look at from a GIS mapping of electoral boundaries to the voter, the polling stations, to something where the use of blockchain and related technologies to ensure that immutable records are being done, and we will be discussing that in a session a little later. And we also use, some of the countries uses AI-powered content, AI languages, etc. So a host of set of technologies, because a large set of technologies are available which can actually be used. But this is a possibility of using it. But as been discussed, the basic tenets of transparency, accountability, efficiency, cost savings, and accuracy and reduction of errors becomes the key aspect as such. Without diluting any of these things, how many of these technologies can actually be used as such? So we can actually go into each of these at each of the stages. For want of time, I'm not going to go into the details, but each of these stages, whether it's legal framework, planning, training, each of these, what type of technologies are actually being adopted, actually can be seen. And this is actually being reflected in the draft report also. There's in the pre-election period, election period, as well as in the post-election period per se. But the important question is that while this is being adopted, the technology stack which we uses, which ranges from digital voter registration to blockchain to video analytics and host of those technologies, we need to actually look at them if you classify it in a shorter form, we can say that, as I said earlier, used for identification, recording, communication, and processing. And this translates into something called a technology stack for the elections. Now, a technology stack for the election is not only about technology. It's about various layers. So you have a security layer. I think after this session, there will be a discussion on that by Professor Preetham, who will be speaking detail on technology, security layer. You also require an infrastructure layer, because some of these technologies which we speak about may not be adoptable in some country because the infrastructure may not actually support that. And some other countries it may be. And you have data infrastructure layer, because the data policies, data laws, and the security of keeping this data, all these things actually will drive the data infrastructure layer. Then you need to integrate all these things. So there's an integration layer. Then there's a platform layer where multiple services are actually getting integrated. And then there is a data layer and an application layer. And the application layer is what is being visible as such. So in a way, we can say that a complex technology stack can actually be built looking at how do we actually deliver multiple aspects of an election cycle per se, with the cross-cutting capabilities like cybersecurity, data protection, transparency, audit, and inclusivity, and analytics per se. But all those things are important. Important question, and this is what the scope is. The question we need to ask is that how much of this is actually being practiced? Now, while you have such a large bouquet of technologies available which can actually be used at various stages, so that's basically where this study also become important. No, some of the literature which says, and we'll show you the live data also soon, shows that if of the 175 states which the 2022 study has done, only around 50 states have used voter identification, biometric technologies. And voting methods also varies. And same is the case with registration. And in a way, we can see that while the maximum being used is electronic tabulation, many of the other things are still not being used as such. If you go specifically onto the actual applications which IIIDEM site speaks about, and you can actually look at each of those, the data is available there, it actually shows you that how the adoption is actually varying. Say, for example, if you take e-voting, most of the countries are actually not a part of it. If you look at electronic tabulation system, even now there are countries which is marked red, are still not using e-tabulation as such. So the question we need, and if you look at official election results published in electronic tabulation system, which is true in case of around 106 or 107 countries, but if you look at whether e-voting is being used, very little amount of them are actually using it. So in a way, one of the key finding when you go through the data is that the adoption of technology, while the technology is available, is drastically varying between these countries. And it's not necessarily that this is because some countries underdeveloped or developed. There are developed countries which have not adopted it. There are not so developed countries which have actually adopted it. So there will be something which needs to be looked at in this context as such. And again, a little dated study in 2020, when it made a study of, which came in the Election Law Journal, which actually says that only around 60% of countries use tabulation, while internet voting is happening in a very, very small percentage of countries per se. So, so there is a paradox here. You have technology available, technology is coming in a big way, and we all use technology in multiple ways, but when it comes to adoption, there is a wide array of different assets. So what are those elements which actually limit the adoption of technologies, and how can you model standards can actually ensure better adoption of technology? That's, I think, is the purpose of this workshop also, and that's basically what we were doing all these last few months, where we start looking at the technical, economical, legal, social, and organizational feasibility of these technologies in various contexts. And can we actually develop set of standards which each country or each EMB can actually look at, see how these aligns with them, and what are those elements which we need to look at it. That is something which is important for us. So there is also issues of cyber security, misinformation, etc., which also we will be discussing as we proceed. So the question of how do we address this? So the methods of addressing this is to create a comprehensive model of international standards. And international standards cannot be a single standard which will be adopted everywhere. That will actually limit the flexibility, and it will not actually be adopted. So we need a framework, and that framework will be able to be adopted by the various EMBs per se. So creating a framework tailored to constitutional, legal, and cultural environment of that particular EMB or the country is something which we need to look at it, and create a progressive way of a roadmap for implementation. Some of them who may be using it very less now, how do they actually proceed to become a, we call in our report what is called as aspirational benchmarks. How do we actually move to an aspirational benchmark as such? So how do you design that? So the designing can actually, that's a framework which we've been adopted. The framework is, as Dr. Kaushikan has rightly pointed out, we did a detailed analysis of a large number of countries, and then specifically, and I will come back to set of countries which we believe has got some uniqueness in multiple ways, and go into the depth of that, and looked at that comparison has given us some standards for assessment. And that standards which gives us some classification of adoption. So this is a framework which has been adopted in this study. So when we looked at, we selected 11 countries for deeper study, which include Estonia, which is generally considered as a country which adopts technology quite extensively. But Estonia is a very small country. The number of people are very small, maybe I think lower than Kerala perhaps. The area may be a little more than that, but the 1.3 million, that's half of, much smaller than what we have. So from Estonia, then India, Brazil, Germany, Norway, Switzerland, and I believe that someone from the Switzerland will also be sharing their experience in today. Kenya, Philippines, France, and Mexico. And there is a reason why we have selected each of these. As I said, Estonia is one classic example of mature nationwide deployment, but India is an example of a very large-scale implementation now. Honorable CEO has actually mentioned that in his address. And we also have Brazil, which has used nationwide electronic voting. You have Norway, which has actually made an evidence-based withdrawal. So we need to understand why that has happened. So in this context, which we looked at the international comparison, and then we looked at a framework where we start looking at each of this technology component. What is the, and which are the countries? Some countries may not have that. So what are those observed in those countries? What is the primary objective of using those technology in those countries? And what are the key benefits which we observed? And what are the key challenges which we observed? And then an assessment of how much of these can actually be transferred into an international level. That means the experience of a particular country, say for example, India, Estonia, Kenya, and Mexico, and digital voter registration, how much of this can actually be transferred as a global standard? Can we actually become a model standard? So you can see here that, yes, digital voter identification has a high transferability. Now, this is a finding of the draft report, and that is something which I think this workshop will need to refine, whether that finding is right or there is going to be a questions on that, and how do we actually fine-tune that. While we find that internet voting, which is being adopted by Estonia, Switzerland, Norway, and France to some extent, we found it is actually having a very low medium transferability to other countries. And what could be the reason for that? We have looked at in the study as such. So we have looked based upon that. Same is the case with EVMs. Now EVMs, for example, India is a country and Brazil is a country which has adopted it. But many other countries have not adopted EVM. And so we looked at what are the issues. Some countries have adopted EVM and then replaced it because of transparency concerns. Stakeholder confidence was not there. There are need for independent verification, which we have used using our VVPAT, but some of the others have not used VVPAT. So such sort of a thing actually made this as a medium thing as such. So something which is truly successful for us, in other contexts it is. So that's why this is a debatable thing. This is something which is a matter for discussion in today's workshop. And so basically, if it is easily transferable, we call it as high. If it is transferable with moderate effort, we call it as medium high. If it is significant effort, if we can do it, we call it as medium, and low medium is limited transferability as such at this context per se. So the key takeaway, as Dr. Kaushigan has rightly pointed out, is that technology, when thoughtfully adopted, make elections more accurate, inclusive, transparent, efficient. The right balance of innovation, infrastructure capacity, and trust is important for that. So that's basically where the standards have to come in. So this examples we looked at from a three levels as such. What are the three levels which we looked at for transferring? We looked at the feasibility. So we looked at how much successfully implemented multiple EBMs have done it, which means highly feasible. So we call it high. If very limited operational evidence are there, only very few countries have adopted it, then we say that feasibility is actually low. Same way the cost, because any technology also has a cost to it, and that cost is not necessarily the money part of it, but the resources available to do that. Sometimes you may have money, but you may not have the resources to do that. Say, for example, making EVMs in a very secure environment is actually a national priority. In India, we are having public sector organizations which is doing that, but may not necessarily for another smaller part of the world, country which may have its own challenges on doing that. So the cost, so we look at whether it's a limited resource burden, moderate investment, or a significant investment. That's basically where the cost aspect comes into picture. And then technical clarity, whether it is easily monitored, understood, and mentored. Can we actually explain to a person this technology very easily, or is it just like UPI, for example, right? Everybody knows that how easy it can be to be operated. It's very easy for somebody to explain that. You move from one bank account to another bank account. So that's why its adoption becomes very easy. So it requires a very specialist knowledge. Like for example, internet voting, one of the reasons could be that it requires a very specialist knowledge to do that. And then difficult to independently verify as such. So with these elements, we actually adopted a model which I told you. These technologies, we looked at a standard assessment, which is what I just now discussed. That is the three levels of criteria: feasibility, cost, and technical clarity. That leads us to the finding that you have three sets of standards, three groups of standards which we can develop. And the first set of standards is something which is called minimum guarantees. Why we call it as minimum guarantees? Because this is something which anyone can actually adopt on those technologies. So a technology, when they getting adopted, the priority has to be given to ensure that these safeguards and requirements should be present irrespective of the specific technology adopted. And what technology you adopt will actually also depend upon the other factors. The second is we also looked at demonstrated recommended practices, measures that have been demonstrated and shown consistent benefits across multiple EMBs, but may require additional institutional capacity investment of technical expertise. Say, for example, EVMs could be one example for that. Say, EVM is tested in at least in 2 countries. It has been adopted very well. So it can actually be adopted in other countries with some level of investment on part of it, and some level of monitoring. Technical expertise on that. And then you have an aspirational benchmarks, which is advanced or emerging practices to offer potential benefits, but are dependent on higher levels of technological maturity. Unless you have a high level of technological maturity, say, which includes even technological maturity from an infrastructure point of view, legal point of view, a legal readiness, cybersecurity capability, and resource availability as such. So this is a framework which we have adopted based upon these 11 countries and the 50 countries, 50 odd countries, which literature which we have looked at it. We actually assess them using flexibility, cost, and technical clarity, and translate into a set of standards per se. And what are those standards? And what is the element of each of these is something which in fact, the report which has been there in your folder actually gives you this same thing. So you can actually go through that. So we looked at minimum guarantees includes governance, which is an important element. That includes the legal framework governing the technology and also the institutional responsibility. These two are important. One is the legal and who is the institution which is primarily responsible for that. And the feasibility enforcement is not very difficult. It is easy, and that is something, even if you are using any technology, any part of the world, this is a minimum guarantee which has to be provided. And if some country or some EMB is not having, that gap has to be identified and to be corrected. And cybersecurity risk assessment has to be done for each of those technologies. Say, for example, if you're adopting a GIS technology, or you're adopting a data collection, big data technology, or you're using an AI, what is the cybersecurity threat of that has to be looked at it. And here, obviously, the feasibility is there because today you have tools available, but there is a cost. There's a cost involved in that because you need to actually go into the much more deeper into assessing of that. So same way, water registration, water verification, voting technology, resource management, transfer. I'm not going to go through each of this. It's already there in that note which has been provided. So this is a minimum guarantees. And as I said, the framework which we have developed and been proposing in this is primarily speaking about saying that these minimum guarantees are something which any AMB have to adopt before adopting any of the technologies. And so these conditions have to be met. Now from there we move into the recommended practices, which is what is not aspiration, which is something which is being adopted with some changes as such. And this has been proved in other places, which is effective. So governance, for example, independent oversight and review mechanisms. Can we actually, when I'm using a technology like blockchain, for example, do we have an independent oversight and a review mechanism to ensure that it has been adopted, it is actually complying with the particular provisions of it. So that's basically where that, and you can see here that many of these are actually having higher cost for implementation. That's one of the difficulty in adopting some of these practices per se. But interestingly, over the period, we all know that the cost of technology comes down. So there is a reduction in the cost as we proceed. But many of them, or if not all of them, is actually having a feasibility, except say, for example, biometric water verification and related aspects as such. Now, the third layer, which is basically the aspirational. Some countries have adopted it, but not too many EMBs have adopted it. So how do we actually go into that? That's basically where we need to have continuous monitoring of in the cybersecurity space, because, for example, if you are looking for a complete online voting, so there should be compared to a electronic voting machine to an online voting, the type of cybersecurity threats are going to be multifold. So you need to have a continuous threat monitoring and resilient testing, and the countries which have adopted, their experience also shows that there are a lot of attacks on their networks have happened in the past. So we need to actually put substantial amount of cost to do that. So some of them may not be feasible for some EMBs as such. So this is the three sets of recommendations or three sets of elements where you would be able to reach based on that. So how do you proceed? So once with this model standards, and as I said earlier, this transferability and the minimum guarantees, the recommendation practices and the aspirational practices all have come based upon the studies which we have done and the experience of practitioners, experience of other EMBs, and all are most welcome to fine-tune this so that we will be able to actually put it as a model which can actually be adopted across the world per se. And that's basically where we look at how do you implement it. Once that is formed, the first step for anybody to adopt it is on these four aspects: the technology design, institutional design, legal design, and quality standards. Identify the gaps on each of these. start with the minimum guarantees and identify what are the gaps available. And then how do I fine tune these 4 elements as such? The technology design, what should be the fine tuned? The institutional design, what should be fine tuned? Legal design, what should be fine tuned? The quality standard, which includes also the culture, how do you fine tune that? Then we need each of these to be adopted, but as we mentioned earlier, our recommendations is that minimum guarantee is something which any EMB has to adopt. And if it is important to drive that gap study and to fine tune their design elements to address that. Then recommended practices, very contextual, depending upon your resources you have, technical expertise you have, the collaborations you have, etc. You may have to adopt that. And finally, to really make full use of the technology in making this process far more efficient and far more effective, while keeping the basic tenets, we need to actually look at an aspirational best practices as such, which basically where a contextual modification or even redefining may actually be required as such. So this is primarily what these workshops, the study which we have done so far has actually been brought in. So the technology canvas is available not only for the front end, but for the entire cycle, as we said, pre-election, election, and post-election. And we have to look at each of these. The minimum guarantees have to be adopted. Recommended practices are the ones which will help you to go into the next layer, and aspirationally something which makes you the best in the world. And identification of, but to do that, you need to identify the drivers and obstacles for adoption, which is very contextual, which will be varying from country to country, the culture of the country, the technical adoption of the country, the trust of the country in the institutions, all of those matters there. And scale of operation, legal, cultural environment, etc. becomes, and that's something which they can actually fine tune on that, and that will actually lead to the identification of standards in the specific context. So thank you very much for a patient listening. So I believe that we will have very meaningful deliberation throughout the day on each of these aspects and see how do we fine tune this model as well as adopt it into the context per se. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Saji sir, for the exceptional keynote address. You have framed a landscape for us brilliantly in this insightful session. If anybody has questions, please feel free to ask. Do you have? If not, then we can take a short break, short pause for a cup of tea and handshakes. We cordially invite everyone to join in. The rest session will be after 10 minutes. Thank you. Hi everyone, welcome back everyone. All are recharged with a quick bolt of caffeine and cookies. Without delay, let's move again. Building on these keys insight, we now move directly into our first focus session on security in election technology by Dr. Preetham Mukherjee. Dr. Preetham is Assistant Professor in School of Computer Science and Engineering in Digital University, Kerala, and Chair of the Institution Innovation Council. He has research experience at KTH Sweden, IIT Kharagpur, and Jadavpur University. He is the Principal Investigator of the METI-funded Cybersecurity Project. Dr. Preetham's research insights include attack modeling, risk analysis, and 5G security. He has authored research publications in reputed international cybersecurity journals and conferences and actively collaborates with industry and government organizations on cybersecurity research and innovations. A brief question and answer session will follow each of the sections. I will request all audience to raise your questions. With that, I request Dr. Preetham to come on stage and share his thoughts on security and certification aspects in election technology. Welcome, sir.
Is it working? Yeah. Good morning, all. Good morning to Dr. Kaushikan, the Honorable Chief Election Commissioner, Kerala, Professor Saji Gopinathan, sir, from Digital University, Kerala, Vice Chancellor, Dr. Balakrishnan, sir, Honorable Director, NUALS, all other dignitaries here and also online. So, very good morning. So, this particular talk is regarding the election and the security aspects of the election. So, I am Dr. Preetham Mukherjee from Digital University, Kerala, and working in the cybersecurity domain. So, like the election technology, like our when we discuss about the security, we discuss security from the enterprise context. So this election commission itself, or the election commission, the works which election commission is doing, can also be taken as a big enterprise. When we talk about the enterprise, there are two types of assets in the enterprise or the organization. One kind of assets are primary assets, which are like abstract in nature, like business processes, activities, and information items, which we are using in the business process. And these primary assets are actually supported by the different types of supporting assets, like software, hardware, network, personnel, site, organizational structure. So already Professor Saji sir actually have given a very good platform where we already have discussed that what are the technologies being used for the election. I will take it from the security point of view. So, as we were discussing that one organization will be having different levels of types of business processes. What are the types of business process this election technology is having? Maybe one could be voting process. So, if you see the voting process, as a business process, there are a lot of activities we are trying to do inside the voting process. And there are a lot of stakeholders. Like maybe there are voter, polling officer, maybe EVM, ballot machines, all these things are actually involved in a business process context, in this particular business process context, that is a voting process. Activities are like maybe a voter will arrive at the polling station, then the voter will present the ID card, then the ID card will be checked by the polling officer to verify the identity. If the identity is valid, then if the identity is not valid, then voter will be rejected. If it is valid, then it will check from the electoral roll. And if the name is found, if not is not found, then it will be rejected. If name is found, then maybe the voting process will actually start, like marking the finger with ink. Then we will take the signature of the actual voter. Then we will activate the ballot unit. Then once the ballot unit is activated, then the voter can cast the vote, actually cast the vote. And once after casting the vote in our Indian context, we will also generate a VVPAT slip. That slip can be checked by the voter. And once they verify the VVPAT slip, then we can store the vote securely. And once the process is over, the voter can leave the station. So this is more or less not the exact one, but a likely case where how our voting process is working and who are the stakeholders here. This is an abstract level. This is an abstract level of the business, which need to be implemented by the supporting assets. So what are the supporting assets to be implementing this? As we discussed, there are like software, hardware, network, personnel, site, organizational structure, they will come. Like our software, like EVM firmware, VVPAT firmware, election management system, voter roll management software, all these things will come in the software. Hardware, like EVM control unit, VVPAT, our power supply, biometric, if we are using biometric, then computer systems, printer, scanner, all will come in the hardware. Network also, things are connected, so LAN, WAN, and whatever this VPN, if anything we are using, that will come in the network. Personnel like polling officers, presiding officers, security personnel, technical staff, election officials, support staff, all will come in the personnel. Site or the actual site where we are taking the vote, that is also important. So like polling station building, entry exit points, maybe power supply, furniture, if we have AC, CCTV camera, accessibility and facility, those things will also come in the site. And we have the organizational structure, that Election Commission of India will come in the organizational structure. Then Chief Electoral Commissioner, what are the roles we have? Then the IT security teams, all these things and their role and the hierarchy will come in the organizational structure. Now, why we are discussing all these things? Because our business process is providing some security requirements. Whenever we are talking about the business process, they are providing some security requirements. And this business process actually is supported or manifested by the supporting assets. Supporting assets need to be secured. So we are securing supporting assets such that the business actually works smoothly or the business is not compromised. If we see primary asset, what are the possible requirements, security requirements? Like we know security triad, like CIA, confidentiality, integrity, availability. If we go a little more, then also authentication, authorization, non-repudiation. This 6 hexad, you may say, this hexad will come, where any primary asset or those activities or the business process may have these requirements: confidentiality, integrity, availability, authentication, authorization, non-repudiation. I'm not discussing all these like definitions. Maybe like confidentiality is like only authorized person, authorized individuals can see something, but those who are not authorized cannot see those things. Integrity, authorized individual can change, but those who are not authorized, they cannot change anything. Availability, things should be available. Should not become unavailable. We can have SLA, service level agreement, about the availability. And authentication, authorization, non-repudiation. This could be the security requirement on the primary asset level. Like as we discussed, this is our that one voting process and the supporting assets which are supporting them. Maybe there is a cast vote on EVM that has a confidentiality requirement. So when you are casting vote, no one should see it. So there must be some protection or some security given to that. So this is a confidential requirement for this casting vote. Record vote, when the vote is registered, then for recording it should be integrity requirement. Because when you are recording the vote, it should not be changed. Someone unauthorized should not change it. So we are having integrity requirement there. If you say enablement of ballot system, there is an availability requirement. If it needs to be enabled, it should be enabled. If I, like by the service level agreement, I should get it, then I should get that thing available. These requirements need to be supported by the supporting assets. So, but the problem is, in the supporting asset level, a lot of security issues are coming. In the business level, there are no issues as such, security issues, because that's an abstract level. But supporting asset level, the software, hardware, network, personnel, site, organizational structure, there are a lot of security issues. Software, like we have software bugs, like vulnerabilities on the software, unpatched vulnerabilities, weak authentication mechanism, maybe password we are using ABCD, EFGH, insecure configuration, maybe it's firewall is, very costly firewall we are using, but the configuration or the way we have configured our network, that is not enough secured. Maybe we are keeping the database server in the DMZ, demilitarized zone. So that means database server is actually accessing from the outside. Lack of input validation for the software. Malware infection is possible, like malware, we know about the different malware, ransomware infections are possible. Then buffer overflow, code injection vulnerability, insufficient login, etc. Hardware like physically tampering. So physical tampering is possible in the devices. Theft or loss of devices. Some devices can be like theft. Then faulty or counterfeit components. So components needs to be checked. The component should not come from any fraudulent like vendor. Lack of tamper evident mechanisms, power failure, wear and aging. If you go to the network, there are a lot of vulnerabilities coming from the network only, like remotely someone is trying to compromise the election system. Eavesdropping, someone is trying to hard like the information which is passing through the internet or the intranet within that premises. Then man-in-the-middle attack, then denial of service attack. If we want to make something unavailable, then we can do denial of service. Weak network segmentation, as I discussed that our different servers have different responsibilities. Database server, web server should not be deployed at the same zone of the firewall. Misconfigured firewalls, unauthorized network access. Personnel is also as we discussed, many personnel are involved in this election process. Insider threat, social engineering attacks, weak password practices, abuse of privileges, and lack of security awareness. This could be some of the weaknesses of the personnel. Site, unauthorized physical access, like someone who is coming, unauthorized person may be coming in. Fire could be a problem. Theft or vandalism could be a problem. Power outage, inadequate physical security controls, environmental hazards. In the organizational structure, like undefined roles, responsibilities, weak governance, poor change management. If someone is leaving one role, so those roles, whatever the authorizations are given for those roles, should be withdrawn. And if they are coming to the new role, those authorization or those things only should be given. Those accessibility should only be given to that particular person. Lack of compliance monitoring. So these are the kind of security vulnerabilities and weaknesses we have. Now if we want to assess the security, we need to see that one particular security requirement of a primary asset, what is that one particular primary asset may be having high confidentiality requirement. And that particular primary asset is actually supported by few of the supporting assets. Some software, some hardware, some personnel, some organizational structure is actually supporting that particular activity. Those supporting assets, how much security they have. So estimated security level provided to that supporting asset, which is supporting one particular primary asset. There is a requirement in the primary asset and the security level of the supporting assets. So if there is a gap between these two, then actually the risk is coming from here. So primary assets are supported and realized by the supporting assets, and security requirement of the primary asset must be fulfilled by the supporting assets. A security gap exists when the estimated security provided by the supporting asset does not satisfy the security requirement of the primary asset. What to do? We need to analyze, we need to identify the security gaps, Then assess the security risk, that where the gap is higher. So those are the most critical like part of our, or say, most insecure part of our organization, where the gap is higher. So requirement is something higher and we are providing less security. Identify and select appropriate security control for that. So we need to find out that what are the security controls or the security measures which can actually provide better security. Implement those security controls, make a security strategy, and reduce the security gap in that way, and achieve a higher or required security level. So this will give a baseline that what kind of security requirements are, because we should not be providing over security, because security will come with as Professor Saji sir also told in the last presentation, security or anything like technology is coming with a cost to the company or cost to the enterprise. So we should not be providing too much security where it is not required. We should find out where the security is required, where the gaps are, and then provide the security strategy. What are the possible security controls? So as vulnerabilities are in the supporting layer, security controls should also come into the supporting layer only. Like software controls, secure software development. So there are like OWASP security controls are there, OWASP top 10, which are the vulnerabilities. Those vulnerabilities we should be mitigating with some control. Software should be patched, properly patched, updated. So patch management is another control. Secure configuration. So the whatever software or the hardware we are using, software firmware, that should be properly securely configured. Code review and security testing also is required. Like we have common criteria certification for the software. So which are common criteria level, like we have, I think, assurance level 1 to 7. So those who are coming in the higher level of common criteria certification, those softwares if we use, we know that we are secured. We are using some security softwares. Multi-factor authentication, instead of single-factor authentication, we can use biometric and multi-factor authentications. Logging, like whatever the things or events are ongoing, that should need to be logged such that we can, at the later stage, we can check that if anything goes wrong, we can check it back. Software integrity verification is also required. In the hardware, tamper-evident seals, physical locking mechanism, secure storage of the EVM and VVPAT, as Professor also discussed during the presentation. Then hardware integrity verification, preventive maintenance, UPS and battery backup. Network controls, network segmentation, firewalls, IDS, IPS system, intrusion detection prevention system, encryption of communication, whatever the communication will be, that need to be encrypted with public-private infrastructure, and secure remote access, continuous network monitoring, personnel, from the personnel point of view, background verification of the personnel. So before taking any personnel into role, we should be properly checking, there should be a proper procedure for checking the background. Security awareness training should be given to them. Role-based access control should come, RBAC. Then separation of the duties should come. Least privilege principle should come, that whatever is required for that personnel, only that access will be given, nothing more than that. Incident reporting procedures should also be followed. Site, physical environment, physical access control should be given, like lock and key or any kind of biometric-based door opening system. CCTV surveillance should be there, visitor management should be there. We can maintain by the registry, physical copy or can digital copy also. Fire detection, suppression should be there, restriction access zones should come, power backup system should come. Organizational controls like information security policies, standard operating procedures, SOPs, then risk assessment and management, incident response plan, business continuity plan and security audits, change management. Those things should be implemented. Security standards or the certification which we usually see in this kind of context are like information security, hardware security, those contexts should come, like ISO 27005, risk assessment and treatment, then ISO IEC 27001 and ISO 27002, security controls, NIST standards, details of technical and administrative controls, NIST security framework, CSF 2.0, overall cybersecurity governance, particularly for like voting system, VVSG, that is given by US security, like election, they're utilizing this kind of standard, VVSG 2.0, for the voting system specific security requirements. Common criteria, as I told, that software, hardware which we are using, that we can see the evaluation level in the common criteria, assurance level. FIPS standard, like 143, validation of the cryptographic modules. So these are some of the standards. There are a few more also. This need to be followed, and maybe we can finally figure out that what are the standards need to be followed for the election, or the whole standard may not be required. Part of the standard may be sufficient for some particular modules. So this is in a nutshell the whole idea what I want to discuss. So yeah, so that's it. If you have any questions or I'm happy to answer. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Preetham, for enlightening on the need and urgency of keeping security as a key pillar of technology environment, not limited to elections alone. Let's pause for an online check for a few seconds. Hope everyone understands. Please wait for a few seconds too. Hi, sorry for the interruptions. Without further delay, I would like to invite Mr. Franklin John, Senior Research Scientist, Kerala Blockchain Academy, a Center of Excellence in the UK, Thiruvananthapuram. Hi, sir. He brings over 10 years of teaching experience and 8+ years of expertise in blockchain training, development, and research. His work spanned blockchain, web development, and artificial intelligence, and with a strong focus on applied research, curriculum development, and large-scale training in program execution. He holds an MPhil in computer science from Cochin University of Science and Technology and has a strong academic and research background. He is the co-author of the book Blockchain Technology, Algorithm and Applications, published by Wiley, which is adopted as a primary textbook by APJ Abdul Kalam Technology University. I request you, sir, to take the stage and share his thoughts. Thank you, sir. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. So, as introduced, myself Franklin. I'm a senior research scientist at Kerala Blockchain Academy. We are a center of excellence under Digital University, Kerala. So, in this short discussion, we will be talking about blockchain technology, how it will be used in election, the benefits of using blockchain technology, and some use cases where blockchain technology was used. And then we will see some challenges also when using blockchain technology. So before we proceed, I hope you all know about blockchain technology. You might have heard about blockchain technology, but I think it is important for us to understand exactly what blockchain technology is. Because when I talk to my friends and say that I'm working in blockchain technology, they actually don't encourage me to talk further because they think I'm working in some kind of money chain kind of area. So blockchain technology, as you might have know, it was introduced in 2008 when the first cryptocurrency called Bitcoin was introduced. But by later 2016, the technology which powered Bitcoin was adopted by other cryptocurrencies also, mainly by one called Ethereum. What made it different at that time is, it is a decentralized technology, but the primary use case of it was to enable transactions in a cryptocurrency point of view. Basically, in Bitcoin cryptocurrency. But when Ethereum was introduced, the technology enabled us to write program code or logic inside this network or in this blockchain technology. So what exactly is blockchain? Blockchain is a distributed ledger technology. So what does that mean? So in order to understand that concept, let me tell you a story. All the characters in the story are fictional. So when we are studying in school, the teachers after the examination will give us answer sheets, right? And the teachers have a bad habit and they will ask us to get it signed by our parents. And my friend, he failed in an examination. So what he did was, he took the answer sheet, he got only 9 marks out of 100. So he took a redding pen and changed the mark to 49. Okay, and he went to his parents and got it signed. He didn't change it to 99 because even the parents won't believe it. So he made it to 49 and got it signed. But the next day, the teacher is cross-checking everyone's signature. The teachers have another bad habit also. They keep a ledger of every student's marks with them, right? If the teacher forgot to bring that mark or the ledger of everyone's mark, then my friend will escape. What if he is cross-checking everyone's mark with that particular ledger. Okay, then my friend will get in trouble. After 2-3 years, the school got upgraded. Now everything is in digital. So what the school now does is, they send each and every student's mark of every classroom to all the parents. And my friend doesn't know that. He again failed, got 9 mark out of 100, and then he changed it to 49, and he went to the parent. But what now happens? The parent already know the mark, right? Even if my friend somehow managed to delete the mark from his parent's email ID, his parent can contact some other parent and get that mark from his son got for that, right? So this concept is called distributed ledger technology. Instead of keeping one copy of the ledger just with the teacher, the mark list or the mark is shared with each and every parent. Now imagine this mark list is shared with everyone in your locality, all to your relatives, everyone in your district. So the uncle and the aunt who asks you, how many supplies do you have? Now you have your mark list. So this concept is called distributed ledger technology. And there are few things. Is it a good thing? It actually depends, right? If you are a studious person, no, it doesn't matter if someone sees your mark. But if your marks are not that much good, it won't be a good thing for us. But this is the concept behind blockchain. It is shared with, it is an open public ledger. Anyone can view and audit. Okay. And another thing that you need to know about blockchain technology is it is a type of distributed ledger technology. That means blockchain is a type of DLT or distributed ledger technology, but not every DLT is a blockchain. What does that mean? So primarily we reference Bitcoin blockchain as a blockchain technology, and that is the concept we have, or that is the benchmark that we have when we talk about blockchain. That means it is open, public, and can be verified by everyone. But industries, when they started adopting blockchain technology, they found it not very good to share each and every information with everyone in the world. So what they came up with a trimmed version of this blockchain technology called permissioned or private blockchain technologies. So now there are two types of distributed ledger technologies. One is blockchain, the other one is permissioned blockchain, as we call it now. Okay. And the main speciality of blockchain is it is an immutable, tamper-evident ledger. That means once you write something to blockchain, it is nearly impossible or practically impossible to change what is written inside this particular blockchain technology. And you cannot alter it. And anyone can verify with enough permission, anyone can verify what is written inside it. So this is the concept of blockchain or distributed ledger technologies. And it was, as I said, it was introduced with Bitcoin, and now other cryptocurrencies and other industries are using, with or without cryptocurrencies, this particular technology. So what are the benefits of it? The first thing is transparency. That means once you write something to blockchain, anyone participating in that network can actually see what is written inside that ledger. So that is the one thing. And it provides a kind of tamper-proofness, or at least tamper evidence. If you make some changes to that, this ledger, that means it will be evident. Just like my friend changed the mark list. Even if he changed the mark in his answer sheet, but since there are multiple copies of it, this ledger can actually be seen and verified by others and see that this one particular ledger is being modified or altered. So it provides a kind of tamper evidence. And this ledger or this blockchain is actually primarily decided to make auditing easy. That means it makes the data, once it is written to it, cannot be modified. That means the system itself brings trust to it. So you don't need to depend on any individual who are actually using this technology. The technology in itself makes sure that something written to it is being tamper-proof. And since it is a decentralized network, single point of failures or single point of attacks are not actually possible. So the decentralization gives it this kind of power. And since it is verifiable, it is also gives a level of public trust available to us. Okay. And this is the main benefits of using blockchain technology. So when coming to election, there are multiple stages in which the blockchain technology can be used. So right from setting up the identity of individuals. So there is something called self-sovereign identities. You might be familiar with it. When we have to prove to someone that if I am an age over 18, what we normally do is we share our identity card or our driver's license to prove that I am above the age of 18. But when we give our driving license to someone to prove that I am above the age of 18, we are also giving them information like our date of birth, our blood group, our address, and all other type of details that are included in the voter's ID or in our driving license. But our only purpose is to share what is that we are over the age of 18. So we are sharing them information that is not exactly required by the other, then it need not be seen by the other person. So self-sovereign identity gives you a power of or control over your data. The data always resides with you. You only share what is required with other one. So there are cryptographic techniques like homomorphic encryptions or zero-knowledge proofs that can be used along with blockchain technology. So researches are going on that can be implemented and can be used to prove your identity using blockchain. And casting votes and encrypting those votes and all those information can be stored in blockchain, detaching your identity with the vote that's being assigned. And that means those who are, I am talking from a conceptual point of view, I'm not going into technical aspects of it, but from a higher level of point of view, we can say that the observers can actually verify the votes that's being casted, but who casted those votes cannot be identified. And the votings can be counted and the results published. So this blockchain technology is not supposed to replace what is existing. It will act as an, a trust layer above the existing system. So currently there are EVMs and all other existing technologies. So blockchain technology will act as a trust layer above this particular existing technologies. So since this is written into a ledger and every stakeholders can actually see the details written in the blockchain, and from current innovations or based on the current research, we can actually restrict who all can see what information. So unlike the earlier days where all the information can be visible by everyone, now we can actually restrict who can see what level of information. So that is there. And some use cases, I need to be clear about something. Currently, blockchain is not being used for any election purposes. These are some of the pilots or POCs that's being used. So in Estonia, as we heard in the earlier session, Estonia, they tried with blockchain technology, but currently, from my understanding, they are not exactly using blockchain technology underlying, but they have tried with blockchain technology for a little period of time. And for West Virginia, USA also, they used blockchain technology with their app called Votes, VOATSC, that's Votes app. So they used for military personnel who are overseas, who are working, serving overseas. And that was also a pilot testing. And in Switzerland also, they used a digital identity, and for that they used a service called UPort. Currently the UPort service is not available, so at that time they used it, but the audience for that particular experiment were only limited, around 350 people were actually using it. And that was not for a major election, that just to get an opinion about some fireworks that's being done. So should they use this fireworks or not? That was their idea. And South Korea also did some experimentation with blockchain. What they did was they stored this elections and their votes in the blockchain, and they used it as a trust layer to verify, to make sure that the data is actually being stored and it is not being tampered with. India also have in the NIC website the details, and IIT Madras also have done some research on with the election commission, so in blockchain technology. So these are some of the use cases. And in India, when we talk about you adopting blockchain, there are many use cases. The main advantages that we can use is the transparency and the auditability of features of blockchain. So not only storing votes in the blockchain, but using the giving the identities for elected or voters, and tracking the EVM from where to where it went, and how the machines can be tracked using blockchain, and the results can be stored and aggregated using blockchain, and then it can also be used to track the funding, everything, etc. in blockchain. Okay, and like any other technology, blockchain also have its own challenges. It is an technology, all the drawbacks that we talk about e-voting is also applicable to blockchain technology also, because the challenges like the device that we are using to do the votes. If you are using a mobile device, it's a type of e-voting. So we need a way to make sure that the device is secure. So unless otherwise we can prove that the device is secure, the votes can be tampered with. And there is always a debate with the privacy of the votes and what information should be visible to everyone. So that point is also there. And since it is a type of remote voting or a voting that can be done online, the coercion or vote buying possibilities may also be there. And the legal or regulatory framework are still not clear about the usage of blockchain technology. So all these challenges are there, but the blockchain technology gives a particular set of values or particular set of advantages when adopted properly. So this is just what I wanted to share. So if you have any queries, you can ask now. So if there are no queries, yeah, please.
ഹലോ, എൻ്റെ പേര് അർജുൻ, ഞാൻ യൂണിവേഴ്സിറ്റി കോളേജിൽ നിന്നാണ്. അപ്പോൾ ഇതൊരു ഡിജിറ്റൽ പ്രോസസ്സാണല്ലോ. അപ്പോൾ എത്രത്തോളം ഡിജിറ്റൽ ആകുമ്പോൾ അത്രത്തോളം ഐ തിങ്ക് സെക്യൂരിറ്റി പ്രോബ്ലംസും അതിനനുസരിച്ച് വരും. അപ്പോൾ ഇപ്പോൾ കഴിഞ്ഞ നമ്മുടെ ഇലക്ഷനിൽ തന്നെ എലോൺ മസ്കും രാജീവ് ചന്ദ്രശേഖറും തമ്മിൽ എക്സിൽ അങ്ങോട്ടും ഇങ്ങോട്ടും മത്സരമായിരുന്നു, EVM ഹാക്ക് ചെയ്യപ്പെടുമോ ഇല്ലയോ എന്നുള്ള സംസാരമായിട്ട്. അപ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ ഇത്തരത്തിലൊരു കാര്യം ഇംപ്ലിമെൻറ്റ് ചെയ്യപ്പെടുമ്പോൾ, അപ്പോൾ മസ്ക് അതിന് പറഞ്ഞത് ഈ എന്ത് സാധനവും നമുക്ക് ഡിജിറ്റലായിട്ടുള്ള എന്ത് സാധനവും നമുക്ക് ഹാക്ക് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുമെന്നാണ് എലോൺ മസ്ക് അതിന് റിപ്ലൈ ആയിട്ട് കൊടുത്തത്. അപ്പോൾ നമ്മുടെ ബ്ലോക്ക് ചെയിൻ ടെക്നോളജിയുടെ കാര്യത്തിൽ നമുക്ക് അത് എത്രത്തോളം പ്രിവെൻറ്റ് ചെയ്യാൻ വേണ്ടി സാധിക്കും?
So like any other technologies, is it okay if I answered you in English? Yeah, sorry. So, like any other digital technologies, it's always what you give in that will be given out, right? Like garbage in, garbage out. So, if we can make sure that the data enters to any digital system, not just blockchain technology, for any digital system, if you can make sure that the data entered to this particular technology is authentic or is correct data, then the technology can ensure that nothing is being changed or edited. But that challenge is always the endpoint, like I mentioned here, the endpoint security. So how this data is being entered into the system is always a challenge. That may be EVM, that may be a mobile app, or that may be a digital kiosk. Anything can be that, but how this data is being entered to the technology is always a challenging point. Yeah.
Hi. Thank you. So I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
One is about the EVM machines. One of the main security aspects of EVM machine is that it's not connected to anything, right? So you can't really tamper with, because it's not. It's a single box which is unconnected to anything. So how do we bring in the blockchain layer on top of such a system, which is a proven technology and a stable one, but now if we have to connect with blockchain, we'll have to give an interfacing, right? Some way we have to connect it. And that's my first doubt. And the other point, it's not a question, but more like when we were going through the previous presentation, like Saji sir explained, the technology is not only used in for say voting.
Yes.
There are many aspects where it's being used. So will a distributed ledger based voter roll be a better possibility of application of blockchain?
Yes. So the first question, the interfacing part, right? So that's always a challenge, because when we put something to not only in blockchain, if you are interfacing it to a connecting to internet or an intranet, that means there is a potential of vulnerability there. So that blockchain technology in itself may not be able to solve that particular challenge, right? That's a challenge with the networking systems and everything. So one thing that we can use is, or do is, I may have to go a little bit technical on this. So instead of using an public blockchain or an an open blockchain system, we can actually opt for a layer 2 solutions in a permissioned or private blockchain system, where this data is being stored in an within the EVM or a system adjacent to this EVM. And then at a later point of stage, when the vote is being casted or vote is being counted, at that time, this information may be transferred to this blockchain, which may not be a public blockchain, it may be a private blockchain. But once this information is being shared with the blockchain, that means multiple parties will be involved in it, and all of them will have the same copy of information shared with them. That means the same information is shared with all of them. So at a later point in time, if some dispute happens, people can always go and refer to that particular data in that blockchain. So that is one way of approaching it. And there may be other ways also, but that's what comes into my mind right now. And regarding the other point, apart from storing the votes in blockchain, we have all these opportunities when using blockchain. Like we may use blockchain to track the EVMs, track the funding, or track the voters. So all those possibilities are there when using blockchain technology. So that's also a possibility. Yeah. I hope I answered your question.
Hello, sir.
Hi.
So you mentioned like some countries like Estonia and Switzerland have experimented with these as pilot projects and all. So, despite its benefits, is it not used now just because the blockchain itself is in a maturing stage or infancy stage? Or otherwise, are there things like fundamental legal issues or other challenges that election management bodies need to address before implementing this?
Yeah. So there are two aspects to it. Blockchain technology is like I said, it was the programmable blockchain systems was introduced in 2016. So it is in technological point of view, it's a pretty new system. So advantages are happening day by day in this technology, and more evaluation is happening in this technology. So since we are closely watching it, something that we saw as a blockchain last year is not exactly what we see this year. So there are changes happening day by day. So this is a pretty new technology, and we are yet to see how this technology is going to establish in the future. But the fundamentals of this technology remains the same. Means it will be a tamper-proof record, which is of a distributed nature. And that is one thing. The second thing is the regulatory part. Like any other technology, like AI, the adoption of AI or adoption of blockchain, everything, it needs a level of regulation from the government. We are still lacking some there are some attempts in coming, or India also have a national blockchain framework, etc. But for a definitive use case, we still need to come up with some regulations. So how this data is being stored and who can actually participate in it. So all those information needs to be, or all those things needs to be considered by the government in that point of view. Yeah. Okay. So I think the time's up. Thank you everyone.
Hi, we are grateful to have a meaningful interaction here. Thank you, sir, for truly visionary presentation, taking us beyond current capabilities and painting such a clear picture of futuristic technology, was both exciting and without provoking. Thank you, sir, once again. Now we take a small detour from the world of tech and move towards a subject which rhymes the foundation aspects of democratic processes, ensuring that all eligible persons are enabled to cast their vote. To speak on this very important topic, I invite Dr. D. Dhanuraj. Dr. Dhanuraj is a public policy researcher, election analyst, and chairman of the Center of Public Policy Research. His work in election studies focuses on electoral behavior, voter trends, constituency-level analysis, public opinion research, and democratic governance. He has led and contributed to election studies across India, campaigning field research, data analysis, and policy insight to examine voting patterns, political narratives, and governance outcomes. A regular commentator in national regional media, he contributes to public discourse and elections, electoral reforms, and public policy. His broad research interests including governance, decentralization, public finance, and institutional development. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for inviting me to share my thoughts on use of technology in elections. And since I am not a tech person, I am not using tech PPT here to share my thoughts. It's a free-flowing conversation. Thank you so much to the Chief Electoral Officer's office and the organizers of the event for conducting such a very important discussion on use of technology in electoral processes. What I remember now, two things. As I was introduced here, I do election studies for last many years, and since 2014, I covered all the general elections and all Indian state elections. And as part of my field and interactions with various stakeholders of elections and electoral processes, I remember in 2021, when I was in Calicut, one of the leading Malayalam dailies, the editor of the Malayalam daily asked me one very, as part of my conversation, just before the assembly elections in Kerala. He asked me, why don't we run a campaign on online voting? My media, my newspaper is ready to run a campaign, not only in Kerala, at the national level. That was the first time actually I thought about it. He said, if you are ready to curate the content and able to write few pieces about it, we are happy to run it and make it as a national campaign. And the reason, very interesting, I think all of us here, when you go to a restaurant or I was coming here taking auto from Tampanu station, and I don't have my cash. I don't have my, I'm actually traveling without much money stored in my wallet. So I was telling my auto driver, I will pay digitally. That's my condition, right? So the idea is that transactions, we do a lot of transactions, right, every day. And if you know the numbers today, we do a lot, around 750 million transactions per day, UPI transactions. That means around 75 crore transactions. And the value of this transaction is around 1 trillion rupees, 1 lakh crore, every day. And it's increasing. And somebody asked me this question. I wrote a piece later on, even though I didn't commit, we can run a campaign. There was a very, exciting offer from a media company. But later I wrote a couple of pieces in national dailies as part of my regular column write for some national newspapers. But the interest that we should evoke, and at least at the academic level, how technology can be used, whether there is any possibility to use technology. Sit at home, cast your vote. While I was doing research for those pieces, I came across so many interesting examples around the world, and also the challenges. Other than the challenges, I'm not a tech person, so I don't want to get into the tech part of that. We have enough and sufficient wisdom in this room. But other challenges, from a policy point of view, from a voters point of view, from an electorate point of view, from a political party point of view. Even after 20 years, I believe we still debate I don't know how many people trust EVM. I've been asked this question many times. I did one. I remember a few years back, Malayalam Manorama asked me to run a discussion on Manorama channel. And I did extensive research how AVM can be trusted. Right? And I have a very simple question also. Correct me if I'm wrong, electoral officers, election, those who deal it daily are here. EVMs are always transferred from one state to other state. Right? The EVM that is used in Maharashtra, that time I remember we used that EVM in Kerala, and it was tampered. Probably the result could have been same. Right? Logical, rational reasoning, that's not the answer to that, but there are steps Election Commission takes up. And also there are cases I know, Supreme Court and all, Balakrishnan sir, I'm sure deal with that. I'm not getting to that aspect, also legal aspects of that. This is also state. I think the first time EVM was used in North Parur constituency. And that was contested, and then the petition was upheld because there was no statute for that, to use that. I think in Europe, the reason why machines are not used on a plain speaking language, I would understand that it is not being statuted. I mean, this is not legalized. It's not because they don't trust machines. So coming to this point, when we do 75 crore transaction every day, more than the vote, I am sure you are transacting a precious hard-earned money, trusting a third-party vendor, even though there is a gateway and payment gateway. As a policy researcher, we sometimes challenge that gateway principle of one agency doing that. But I'm sure you all use private front end to transact money. And the failure rate is 4 to 5% if I'm not wrong, right? That is 30 million, right? Out of 75 crore, every day you have failure rate of 3 crore. It's not a small number. What I am coming to is, if you can do 75 crore, what is our total voters list? I think last time, 2024 Lok Sabha elections, we had around 91 crore people voting. So it's almost towards that number, right? Approaching that number, we do 75 crore transactions every day, UPI transactions, and we have 90 crore people or more than that in the coming elections. And it is being done. And that transaction is being done at your convenience, right? Sitting at home, you order many things. Sitting at home, you order food. You're sitting at home, you order clothes. You're sitting at home, you order books. Whatever, everything. See, our latest research in public policy is that in India, we are getting, earlier we used to say Uberization. I think now we are getting into Swiggies and Zomatos. I don't know the right term, we are trying to coin that word, meaning door-to-door entry, right? Everything you want to deliver at home. That's slightly different from Uber. Uber doesn't have to come at doorstep, you can be anywhere. I think that's an increasing, or that's a prevalent understanding or anticipation or expectation from the general public now. Everything should be delivered at the doorstep. If that is the case, why not voting also, right? And I know Election Commission has taken up the step, you have the electronic, the postal ballot been introduced. I'm not so sure is any complaints out of that, but largely it has been fairly accepted, I believe. So I'm not only talking about voting, it's also so many processes leading to the voting. There are also use of technology is possible. So what are those areas? And then I'll conclude by saying, what is a policy approach to it in electoral processes. So voting, before we discuss any of this, I think there should be a statute. I think it can't be arbitrary, it can't be, we should not leave a space where this can be challenged and contested because there's no legal statute. So every process that we do, if required, I think most of the times the statute is required when voting is happening, not before and after that. So that is part of the voting, the live voting part. What are the other steps, what are the other avenues where we can think of more and more technology use? So one would be, if I do it step by step, and many of the steps are taken, but we can think about how to improve it. This is also a time we talk a lot about delimitation, right? The whole conversations around delimitation exercise in the country. And I don't know anybody is dealing with GIS mapping and plotting the boundary and give more informed insights when you draw the boundary of a constituency using GIS and all. There's an opportunity lying there, right? I hope this will be taken up at a larger way in the whatever ways we are going to do delimitation. That's a different debate, political debate, and also the administrative debate. But I think delimitation is offering at this stage use of technology. That will also be reversible because it can be publicly contested. I think in 2009, 8-9 time when delimitation happened in Kerala or many parts of the country, I'm not so sure whether public got the opportunity to contest it openly, even though there's a provision for that. Because we don't access the data, we don't have the availability of the data in the public domain. Mostly the political parties contest it. But I think there's a time now we do the end-to-end, like I said, door-to-door, we should be able to contest it. So that's one platform where I see use of technology can be very useful. And when you contest it, it is also it can be used to reverse the process, meaning we can rewrite the boundaries if there is a proper, genuine reason to rewrite that. Second is role management. That is in the water enrollment. I know there are many, I think the platforms like Euronet, EasyINet, there are many digital roles being initiated by Election Commission these days. I think this could be improved. And what I understand, my understanding, because I'm somebody who enrolled long back, but I hear from the students, university students and college students, like they can also do it sitting at home, and how can we strengthen that process so that the contestation again could be limited or reduced over a period of time. Easy to enroll. Then role duplication, that is again a process that is being contested, challenged many times, whether technology can be used in a better way. And also there's a technical question, I think Aadhaar linking voter ID and all is a contested debate, I understand that, but still, can we use technology for that? Then the fourth one would be the voter ID at booth, when you go to vote. Is any way, whether your biometrics can be used or whether is any other technology can be used so that a filtration or identification, not filtration, identification. Filtration is the challenge there. Sorry for using that term. Not to filter people, but to identify the right voter. That's other venue for voter ID at the booth. Then nomination disclosure. I think our country is so, I always wonder, I walked with some of these candidates when they go and file this nomination, It's some top political leaders will walk for 2 kilometers, the whole, city and, probably all state will go for a jam and nothing happens that time. And whether we can sit at home and do that, I don't know. Why don't we do that? Because I was part of this project long time back. I mean, this is in 2007-8 time. There was a project called, when the judgment came, you have to disclose the affidavit disclosure, the asset disclosure. That time it was not easy. So what we used to do that I was actually doing for Kerala State in my younger days. We go and collect it from the office and then we scan it and then we upload it for the public disclosure matter. Now I think things have changed a lot. Now we can do that. I think that these things, nomination, I was like talking about the disclosure part, but it could also be a nomination part. Why should, if I want to file a nomination in Varanasi, I should be able to do it, sit at home in Kochi. That's a way we should look at it. Then campaign enforcement. I know the Commission has already initiated process like C-Vigil, MCMC and all. Campaign enforcement, especially the social media part. I wrote a paper last year, for a foreign journal that's in the public domain now. We actually studied 2024 elections and how AI and other tools influence in the elections. Okay. It's very difficult to assess it. So what we did, our methodology was, there are people actually working this. They keep observing it. We also use C-Vigil for some time, part of the system. We talk to social media companies, how they do that. And we looked at the numbers, live numbers, actually how many clicks for some of the campaigns. But I think technology could be used for a better assessment and understanding and make elections neutral, right? It's not hijacked by fake campaigns and fake news and fake ideas, right? So that's another area I think we should work on. Then polling, of course, we are talking about EVMs and VVPAT. There's always discussion about VVPAT, how spread that VVPAT should be. That's other one. And polling, that's probably the focus here, more or less, how we use it for polling. My issue with that is not with the technology. Okay, respect technology, we are all using and consuming technology. Election is a process where you win the trust of voters, right? It should be beyond any suspicion. It should be beyond any mistrust. It should be beyond any, alleged malpractices, right? The moment the voters lose that trust, the problem is democracy in crisis. It's not about elections. Democracy is in crisis. When I started my career as an election analyst, one of the papers I read that time was from 1990s to 2005, I remember, if I'm not wrong. This is a paper co-authored by Shamika Ravi in her peak research career. She and her authors identified that when the ballot paper were in use, they studied some North Indian states. And then they studied how that system changed with the introduction of EVMs. And then the finding was that and their argument was, when paper ballots were used, the same government ruled the state for decades, right? But that can be contested now. There are states, even after EVM, there are government states where EVM, even after EVMs, they are ruling for decades. They rule for decades. But the idea of that paper was that EVM brought more transparency and removed all the malpractices to a great extent. They had evidence, photographs, newspaper reports in their paper, how booth capturing were happening, how they used the machinery, police machinery or state machinery to capture the booths and all. So that was the case. So I think whenever we discuss technology, make sure that people trust that. We trust UPI more than probably EVMs and elections. That's why we don't mind transact our hard-earned money through the channels. We don't know who is the other person receiving that money, but we trust that channel. That is the trust that we need to. I just do it in 2-3 minutes. Then counting. What is the use of technology? How do we use? I know NCORE tabulation is done these days. And then, of course, postal, I already discussed. I think Commission has already started that process. Remote voting is another contested idea in India. Remote voting, especially for NRIs, they also told that you have to be in Indian missions and Indian consuls to vote it. I don't know, exactly, but this is what I'm told by many people, not exercised. And I also remember, I think Election Commission 2022, I believe there was an attempt by Election Commission for a RVM. There is a computer mega system that was set up, and it can connect to some 64 to 72 constituencies. Even though Election Commission announced it, the day that was supposed to be demonstrated, political parties opposed it, then Election Commission, then afterwards I didn't hear about that. I don't know what is exactly the status of that project. So I stop here, but my takeaway or my learning in this, this is a very interesting topic, we can go for hours. Elections should be beyond suspicion. It should be, nobody should suspect how elections are being conducted, what technology, whether Election Commission is a provider or regulator, that's a major question that we need to ask. A policy point of view, how auditable, how publicly investigated, examined, assessed by every voter in the country. It's not about few people sitting in this room can assess and say like this is a great idea. What Indian democracy, when we say largest democracy in the world, I think it thrives on with the very electoral process. I don't think it's all about the parliamentary system that we follow. More than that, above everything, I think it's election and electoral processes that makes our system robust and convincing to everyone. That's why we have a rule of law in this country to a great extent. We believe that the people who elected by us are actually passing the laws for us, so we should abide by that law. And if there's a crisis in terms of the trust, then it will collapse. So I stop here. I have so much to discuss, but I'll stop here. Yeah. Any questions, anything, any comments?
ഹലോ സാർ, അപ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ അപ്രോപ്രിയേറ്റ് ടെക്നോളജി ഫോർ ദ സ്റ്റേജസ് ഓഫ് എലക്ഷൻ. അപ്പോൾ എനിക്ക് തോന്നുന്നു നമ്മുടെ ഒരു എലക്ഷനെ കുറിച്ചുള്ള ഇല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഇലക്ട്രൽ കാര്യങ്ങളുമായിട്ട് ബന്ധപ്പെട്ടിട്ടുള്ളൊരു അവബോധം ജനങ്ങളിലില്ലാത്തതൊരു വലിയ പ്രോബ്ലമാണ്, ഇലക്ഷനെ കുറിച്ചുള്ള പ്രോബ്ലമാണ് എന്ന് എനിക്ക് തോന്നുന്നു. അതുപോലെ തന്നെ നമ്മൾ ഡിജിറ്റൽ കാര്യങ്ങൾ ഇലക്ഷനിൽ ഇംപ്ലിമെൻ്റ് ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ വലിയൊരു പ്രോബ്ലം ഉണ്ടെന്ന് പറയുന്നതും എന്താണ്, നമ്മുടെ ടെക്നോളജിക്കൽ നോളജിലുള്ള ഗ്യാപ്പ് എന്ന് നമ്മൾ പറയുന്നുണ്ട്. അപ്പോൾ പക്ഷേ ഞാൻ സാറ് പറഞ്ഞായിരുന്നു നമ്മളൊരു ഇലക്ഷൻ ക്യാമ്പയിൻ ഇലക്ഷൻ അവയർനെസ്സിന് വേണ്ടി റൺ ചെയ്യുന്നതിനെ കുറിച്ചൊക്കെ സംസാരിച്ചിരുന്നു. അപ്പോൾ നമ്മുടെ കേരളത്തിൽ ഇപ്പോൾ ഡിജിറ്റൽ ലിറ്ററസി 100% ആക്കുന്നതിന് വേണ്ടിയുള്ള ഒരു ഡ്രൈവ്, ഒരു ക്യാമ്പയിൻ നടന്നിരുന്നു. അപ്പോൾ അതിൻ്റെ ഭാഗമായിട്ട് അതിലുണ്ടായിരുന്ന ചോദ്യങ്ങൾ ഇതൊക്കെയാണ്. നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ആമസോൺ വഴി സാധനം ഓർഡർ ചെയ്യാൻ അറിയാമോ? ഓൺലൈൻ വഴി സാധനം വാങ്ങാൻ അറിയാമോ? ഫേസ്ബുക്ക് യൂസ് ചെയ്യാൻ അറിയാമോ? വാട്സപ്പ് യൂസ് ചെയ്യാൻ അറിയാമോ എന്നൊക്കെയായിരുന്നു. പക്ഷേ എന്തുകൊണ്ട് നമ്മൾ ഈ ECI നെറ്റ് യൂസ് ചെയ്യാൻ അറിയാമോ എന്ന് ചോദിക്കുന്നില്ല? സോ നമുക്ക് ഏറ്റവും എളുപ്പത്തിൽ നമ്മുടെ ഇലക്ഷനുമായിട്ട് ബന്ധപ്പെട്ടിട്ടുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങൾ ജനങ്ങളിലേക്ക് എത്തിക്കാൻ പറ്റുക, അതായത് നമ്മൾ 100% ഒരു കാര്യം ചെയ്യാൻ വേണ്ടി നോക്കുമ്പോൾ, അതായത് എല്ലാ ജനങ്ങളിലേക്ക് എത്തിക്കാൻ വേണ്ടി ഒരു ക്യാമ്പയിൻ നടത്തുമ്പോഴത്തേക്കും അതിനകത്ത് ഇലക്ഷനുമായിട്ടുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങൾ ഉൾപ്പെടുത്തിയാൽ നമുക്ക് ഇലക്ഷൻ്റെ ഒരു അവബോധം ഇല്ലെങ്കിൽ ആ ഒരു നോളേജ് ജനങ്ങളിലേക്ക് ഏറ്റവും പെട്ടെന്ന് എത്തിക്കാൻ വേണ്ടി സാധിക്കില്ലേ?
ഓക്കെ, ക്വിക്ക് ആൻസർ. എനിക്ക് തോന്നുന്നു നമ്മൾ ഇലക്ഷൻ കമ്മീഷൻ കഴിഞ്ഞ കുറേ വർഷങ്ങളായിട്ട്, കഴിഞ്ഞ കുറേ ദശാബ്ദങ്ങളായിട്ട് ഇലക്ഷനെ പറ്റി ഒരുപാട് പ്രചരണങ്ങൾ, അതിൻ്റെ ഒരു മാനിഫെസ്റ്റേഷനാണ് നമ്മുടെ വോട്ടിംഗ് പെർസെൻറ്റേജും കൂടി വരുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ that's anyway it's happening. I'm not saying election commission has not taken steps. We are doing it. I think they are working with the universities, colleges, many other institutions. It's getting better and better, I believe. Second, ഇതിൻ്റെ ഓൺലൈൻ്റെ ഒരു പ്രശ്നം എന്താണെന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ, that's what I wrote actually. The idea was that you get some 30 seconds or 2 minutes to cast your vote. Okay, let's say you have a laptop, that window will open within 2 minutes, like when you are in booth, that 2 minutes you get the opportunity to vote. Okay, then that window closes. Then you can't reopen and do it, or you can't edit it, anything that you said about blockchain and all, right? That's also a possibility. But the problem was, how do you ensure that when I sit at home or wherever I'm sitting, I'm not doing that voting not under any intimidation? Somebody is pointing his gun at my neck and vote it, because that will not come in that let's say, you can even say that we can have a live video, live camera and all, but even then, how do you make sure that somebody sitting here, you're voting, I'm asking, vote for that person? That's a tricky part, that I don't know how technology can solve it. Because we say that election should be free and fair, right? When you say free and fair, the challenge is when you sit in even at home, because in North India we found, even now, many people influence your voting. Even we'll go to the booth, many people will be intimidating you, go for that, go vote for this particular party, go for this particular candidate. So how do you know that? But that's still happening in the public space. Still I can figure out. But when you sit at home and do it, how do you ensure that nobody is pointing gun at you? How do we measure that the free and transparent, fair election process? That's a challenge. That still I'm not able to find the answer for that. How do you ensure that? We looked at the American system. There also it happens. Right. Intimidation happens everywhere, not only in India, across the world. Right? Don't think that we are the poor country. People do all the nonsense. No, everywhere it happens, and everywhere they have the problem. Okay, so I stop now. Thanks.
Sorry for the hurry, sir. We have to cover one more session before lunch. Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Dhanuraj, for that moving and impactful address, reminding us that innovation and governance means very little if they have anyone behind was a powerful message. Please hold for a few seconds while we do an online check, please.
Hi, am I audible and visible? And is the screen being shared?
Hi. We move to hybrid mode with our next speaker joining us from Switzerland. Our next speaker focuses on another key pillar of democracy, that is, on federalism and its importance on smooth functioning of an electoral democracy. Dr. Rekha Alshek-Pillai is a senior research fellow at the Institution of Federalism and Lecture, University of Fribourg. She holds degree from the University of Bern and St. Gallen, Switzerland, University of Aberdeen, and Kerala University. She also holds the position of Legal Officer, Department of Public Security, City of Langenthal, Bern, Switzerland. Her current research focuses on comparative constitutional law, public international law, and intersection between law and development. I invite Dr. Rekha Alshek-Pillai to share her thoughts on federalism. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Namaskaram. Guten Tag. I am very happy to be here today, online, of course. I would have loved to be in Tirunelveli, where I spent 5 years of my life. Today, I have been invited by the organizers to give some insights into the Swiss experience. I was very happy to listen to the former speakers, also in terms of how the debate is taking place on the use of technology in elections. So I would concentrate a bit more on a more higher level, talking about Swiss democracy in general, the concept of Swiss federalism, as well as looking at some democratic innovations that are taking place and being practiced in Switzerland. We heard from, I think it was Dr. Franklin, who spoke about Zug in Switzerland, where the electronic voting was used for one election or vote. And he said it was a small event, something to do with whether there should be fireworks or not. And in fact, it is very accurate what Dr. Franklin described, because this is a country of a semi-direct democracy, which means that you have a mixture of representative democracy as well as direct democracy. So people go to vote and to elect people all the time. So we have around 2,100 municipalities in the country, around 4 elections or votes a year, which means we carry out in this very small country of 9.1 million people around 8,400 elections or votes every year. Okay, so this is where democracy is actually practiced at a in a very different manner than in other countries, or even in places where we only have representative democracy. So on the left, you see a sign which says "On vote aujourd'hui." Switzerland is a country with 4 languages, and this is French. They say today is the day for voting, and you see such signs up across the country on voting day, and at bus stops, at school buildings, etc. So this is something which is extremely practiced and is part of the Swiss political identity. On the right-hand side, it is a postcard which I found from the 1800s. There you see the Landsgemeinde. This is a cantonal assembly, political assembly, where people are voting. And this still takes place, 2 cantons in the country, Appenzell Innerrhoden and Glarus, still practice the Landsgemeinde, which means that the cantons or the states in India, where people actually come together 4 times a year and they vote on the issues that are pending. Of course, on the picture, you also see, you might notice it's too far away, women are standing outside, because until the 1970s and in some cantons until the 1990s, women were not allowed to be part of the political system. So the voting this is a picture from the 1800s, late 1800s, women were not allowed to vote. So what is the Swiss political system about? It is a form of bottom-up federalism, which is very unlike the Indian system. Of course, in India, we had colonialism, you had the British, who, for them, the political entity as such as we know India today would not have happened, and the federal part of the constitution was certainly a little bit of not really something which not all political actors at the time of constitution writing in India wanted to have a federal system. Switzerland, on the other hand, is a bottom-up federal system. The cantons or the states of Switzerland, there are 26, have joined together to form what is called the Swiss Confederation. In reality, it is a federation, but they kept the name so that people would not be against the system. There had been a loose form of confederation from already 1291, so it goes back a long way. In the Swiss system, we have 27 constitutions, of which one is the federal constitutions and 26 cantonal ones. And this is important because the cantonal constitutions are valid and have quite a lot of importance in how the country is run. In Switzerland, the cantons are considered sovereign, so this is similar to the US system to the extent that their sovereignty is guaranteed by the federal constitution. The speaker before me talked generally about the political atmosphere. And here we have a very strong system of political rights protection, which is not only exercised by the political parties themselves, but also by individuals, by associations. There is a lot of commonality between society in Kerala, where associations are also very active, and Switzerland. There is a free press. It is, of course, the same as in other European countries. You have pressures on the free press, and there is complete academic freedom. So this, I think, are those aspects which we always need to keep in mind, whether a political system functions or not. What is very different in Switzerland is that you have a system of consensus democracy with mostly proportional representation, which means that smaller parties have a real chance of being in government. I am myself a member of a political party. It's a small political party called the Green Liberals, and the Green Liberals, having been making inroads into many cantonal governments because of the system of political representation through proportional representation, which is very different from how the Indian system works of first past the post. What is also different in my perspective between India and Switzerland is that the cantons have a real say in federal decision making. In Delhi, especially under the Modi government, there seems to be absolutely no taking states into the political decision making, even where aspects have very strong implications for the states. The latest, I would say, Manrega change was one of those kind of examples. Switzerland also has a system where there is extremely strong intergovernmental cooperation, both vertically, that is between the federal level and the cantonal level, as well as between the cantons. So the cantons have very strong bonds among each other. They would come together. There are institutionalized methods of cooperation, but also ad hoc when there needs to be. There are direct democratic instruments in use. I will not spend too much time on that, but this is a very important part of how the Swiss democracy works. At all three levels of government, so the federal, cantonal, as well as the municipal level, you have instruments of direct democracy, so people can come together, collect votes, and demand that, for example, the constitution be amended, so at the federal level or at the cantonal or even at the communal level. There is a requirement for mandatory referendum in the federal constitution for very important issues, for example, access to supranational bodies, there's a constitutional amendment which is considered extremely important. There is the aspect of optional referendum, which means that a legislation passed by the legislature can be challenged by the public, which needs then a particular number of signatures to be collected, which can then initiate a referendum. And when that happens, the optional referendum, that means that the legislation cannot come into existence without the referendum having been over or that the population accepts the legislation. On the slide, you can see that there have been at the federal level instruments of direct democracy being used quite a lot. And in the first, it's unfortunately in German. I didn't find the slide, I didn't find the statistics in English. So on the left-hand column, you see the number of compulsory referenda. In the middle, it's the faculty referenda, or facultative or non-compulsory. And the right column with number 204 and 25. These are popular initiatives. 204 popular initiatives were put to vote until 2023. 200 and almost 230 popular initiatives. Only 25 were accepted. So popular initiatives, they provide an avenue for citizens to claim, demand something, but they are not always very successful. I would like to talk a little bit about the principles of federalism, which have an impact also on elections, and that is the principle of subsidiarity, which comes originally from a little bit from Catholic thinking, of the family is the smallest unit of governance, and then the village, etc. And so the principle of subsidiarity, which is in the federal constitution and quite practiced, is that the lowest level possible deals with the task at hand. So if it's a matter which can be dealt with by the municipal or the communal level, it does not need to go to the canton or to the federal level. The federal level, in fact, only has competences that are explicitly assigned to it. It does not have competences if it is not explicitly mentioned in the Constitution. The Indian system, again, is different. The second point, which has a very strong bearing on elections and organization of wards, is the organizational autonomy of the cantons, which means that they are responsible, they organize, they supervise elections, as well as votes on direct democracy. And the cantons have like the supervisory role and the third level of government, so the panchayat level in India. The municipalities and the communes, they operate within the autonomy granted by the cantonal constitution, but this includes the conduct of elections and wards. So the place where I currently work, my department also is responsible for carrying out the voting and elections, which I will talk about in a few minutes. I will skip this slide. I can share the slides afterwards. So the organization of the elections or voting, so I'm making this differentiation because we have that also in the terminology in Switzerland. We use Wahlen in German, which is Wahlen stands for elections, and Abstimmungen stands for voting, and mostly on direct democratic issues. So, for example, we have around 4 times a year that we go to the votes, and the dates for the federal level matters. So these are fixed quite in advance, so like around 2 years in advance. So these dates are already known, and it's always the voting date is a Sunday. And the former speaker just mentioned postal voting or remote voting. And what we actually do is remote voting because it's always, you get the ballot by post. So postal voting is very established. You get the ballot by post, you can send it back by post, or you can decide to go to the election place. So it can be a primary school or a public office, and actually personally hand in your votes. But you don't have to do that. You can just send it back by post. So the next vote at the federal level is fixed. It's on the 27th of September 2026, and we have 2 direct democratic votes that will take place. One on the so-called neutrality initiative, which is has been put forward by the right-wing parties, that what Swiss neutrality should consist of. And the second one is called the sovereignty of food. So it's about having more production of food within the country. And that is another popular initiative which is coming to the vote. In the canton of Bern, so I live in the canton of Bern, on the same day we will have a popular vote on education. And depending on the communal level, it could be that the commune itself has a vote which they need to carry out. For example, whether a schoolroom should be built, whether a swimming pool should be financed, whether a hospital building needs to be taken upon, or maybe there is even a facultative referendum. The legislature has passed a law on parking spaces, and a section of the population is not happy. They will bring that again to the urns. So how are these then actually put into practice? Here I speak more from my personal experiences as a voter, as a political candidate, and also as a legal officer in the administration. So as a voter, you get your postal votes around a month before the voting takes place. It is a packet with, depending on whether there are several votes taking place or whether there are elections taking place. It can be a very thick envelope that you get, or a thinner one. The main parts of the envelope are, first of all, information or your identity. So there is a voting card which you personally have to sign with your name, your address, etc. Then you have, and this has to go into a separate envelope if you're sending it back by post. And then you have another envelope with the different levels of government. So the federal level, cantonal level, and the communal level. The voting slips are separate, and then you can put in your choices on these voting slips, separate voting slips. And then you say, yeah, as I mentioned already, you already send it back by post, or you go and hand it in. As a political candidate, I have been standing for elections. I'll show another slide on that. As a legal officer and the administration. So I asked my colleague who is responsible for carrying out the elections, how many, how his organization is. And he handed me a document with 72 steps that are fixed for around 4 months before the elections on things that need to be done at the communal level so that the election can be conducted, which includes ordering paper for the voting slips itself. I would like to spend a few minutes on what are the innovations in democratic practice in Switzerland for the earlier speakers. So, as I mentioned, the practice of democracy is not just electing representatives, but it is much more than that. So we have direct democracy, so I can decide whether the local school should be built, or there should be a swimming pool which needs to be financed, a sports institution, etc. But in addition to that, you also have more and more other forms of democratic participation. For example, citizen assemblies. These have been conducted on the costs of healthcare, which are increasing. A random group of citizens are selected, and they come and talk about certain issues and how to deal with them. Bringing politics to young voters, we have a so-called Easy Vote app and information brochures which have been developed over the last few years. It's an association which is a non-profit association which tries to bring more young people to vote, and 529 communes of the 2,100 communes in Switzerland, they are part of this, or they have agreed to be part of it, or they pay for it also. So they get, for example, my two sons, one just turned 18 and the other one's 22. They get Easy Vote information along with the postal voting information. The information brochure is very easy to read. It is a much more accessible way for young people to decide on more complicated issues. Also, what I find very interesting is I can compare myself to other people on the voting list. As I mentioned, we have a system of proportional representation. That means you give your votes to the party, but to the party list, and still you can choose whom you want to vote for. For the last cantonal elections, I was a candidate, and this is my so-called spider, which assesses, or I can as a political candidate standing for elections, put in my preferences on a series of questions, and it, this app or this website called Smart Vote gives you an accurate representation of where this person stands on certain issues. So on my spider, you can see that I am for a very open foreign policy. On the liberal society, I'm not that open. Expansion of the welfare state, I'm extremely high there, as well as on environmental protection. On immigration policy, I am more for a laissez-faire attitude, law and order, etc. I'm rather on the easy side. So it allows people to check the preferences of political parties as well as individual candidates and decide, do I want to vote for this person or not? Okay, so this I think is pretty useful information as a voter, but also as a candidate. And finally, I come to the issue of e-voting. It has already been mentioned, and also in the organization committee's brochure study, you have been looking at the example of Switzerland. So here there is a cooperation between the federal level and cantonal level since 2004. So they started out in 2004, and over 300 pilot projects have been carried out. However, it is not that e-voting is established. Postal voting is extremely established. It has been taking place for, 60, 70, 80 years. That's not an issue, but as far as e-voting is concerned, there is still, it is not established. So from 2012 to 2019, the Canton of Bern did use e-voting for the diaspora, so non-resident Swiss, but this has also been stopped. It is currently in use in some of the cantons. Again, it's another pilot which has been initiated. So the city, the Basel City, Thurgau, St. Gallen, and Graubünden are currently carrying out also e-voting for a very limited percent of the population, not everybody, but kind of they will choose, or people have to apply to do the e-voting. In Basel City, the last elections, which were carried out in March, there were some problems. Around 2,000 of the votes could not be counted, the ones which were done by e-voting, and so it has been put on hold. The strategy, as far as I can assess, is that it is also the official communication, security over speed. We are not going to do something where just for the sake of adoption of technology, that you'll adopt the technology, but it has to be grounded, it has to be trustworthy, etc. I'll conclude with a few points, what makes Swiss federalism or the Swiss system different from the Indian one. The Swiss federal system, coupled with semi-direct democracy, allows generally for a deeper participation of the citizens in the polity. There is long-standing experience with communal level, conducting elections and votes for all three levels of government. So it is really the panchayat which is conducting the election. It's not even the cantonal level. What it does require is extremely strong coordination between all three levels of government, also autonomy, and including that to make mistakes. So the fact that 2,000 signatures or votes could not be counted in Basel City, it is a transparent thing. Yes, problems happened, mistakes were made. How can we change it? And this is, again, a trust issue. Do we trust the system enough that even with that mistake, Basel City still kind of will rework its procedures to ensure that the system functions? As far as e-voting is concerned, as well as e-collecting, because the instruments of direct democracy require people to collect signatures, 100,000, 50,000, etc. And e-collecting also requires that you need to be able to identify yourself, that you are allowed to, well, only citizens allowed to vote. So these are all still in experimental stages. And my assessment is that the preference is given to security and trustworthiness than to economic efficiency or speed. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to take questions if you have any, or otherwise you can send me an email. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rega, for your wonderful presentation. It is rare to hear a perspective that completely reshapes how we view the subject. You have challenged us to re-examine our assumptions and given us a whole new framework to think forward. Thank you, ma'am. With this, we will break for lunch until 2 p.m. I request all of you to take back on time. Thank you once again.